KOMC,
HD3 Detroit,
KJAQ,
HD3 Seattle,
WBMX,
HD3 Boston, and on AOL Radio and Yahoo Launchcast. Psychic Radio is now CBS Radio's The Sky. Back to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. Call now 248-545-SOUL. New skyradio.com. Believe.
Why do paranormal parasites seem to attack some people and not others? What if it happens to you? How can you be sure that you're not just imagining things?
Well, hello, friends, and welcome to the 177th edition.
I think it's 178th, actually.
No, this is the other station. Is the even numbers.
Oh,
all right. Anyway, well, someplace around there. We're way up there. Edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. I'm Paul, and those very apt questions came from my son, co-host, and partner in the paranormal, Ben.
It's another P word in there.
Indeed.
Right. So our guest this evening is a serving police officer from Vermont whose identity we won't reveal for obvious reasons. At risk of being overdramatic, let's call him Officer X. But he's not here, so...
Well, there's a little bit of a story behind this. We were involved in a case since about 2005 with him, and we refer to him as the Haunted Policeman, and the case as the Haunted Policeman case. Ben was one of his first ones, and he had to work tonight, and we had expected him not to have to do that, but the police dispatcher in his community was very kind enough to patch us through to his patrol car, and he was in the middle of an arrest. So we had to kind of let him. We're going to let him finish that. He's going to call the CBS in Detroit, and they're going to hook us up hopefully with this. So we will get to Officer X because it's a fascinating case. So we'll go to Plan B until Officer X calls in. So Plan B tonight, we have a couple of things to announce and some paranormal news, which we very seldom get to.
Except for like the first few episodes we had, we got to it.
Yeah, we did. Maybe we were better organized back around show 1 or 2.
No,
I suppose we weren't. Anyway, I wanted to welcome certainly our special reporter now, Albert S. Rosales. Ben and I had him as a guest on September 6th on show number 170. Albert has spent many, many years compiling reports of humanoids, whether they be alleged aliens or just strange beings who somehow turn up in people's lives and interact. And he has reports going back into several thousand years ago, and it's really fascinating. Check out his website, www.ufoinfo.com. And we're going to consider him a sort of a special reporter because he's going to be feeding us information from this database that he has of these amazing cases. And again, most of them are very detailed, and he does what he can to make sure that they are relatively accurate reports. Although we can only do so much because it's kind of a tremendous undertaking for one person. Okay. Let's go. There are a number of online sources that will very kindly send you information on a daily basis. And one of these is Phantoms and Monsters. It's a great site. And the number of reports for this is reports number 24, and it has to do exactly with humanoid and cryptid encounters. Now let's look at one that occurred just very recently here. This is on. Oh no, I'm sorry. This isn't that recent. It's January 1st, 1976, but it has to do with a lot of reports that came in around that time of the so-called Birdmen. very large birds or almost Mothman-like creatures, or sometimes Thunderbirds as they were known. And this the print's very small here, so bear with me. This report came from January 1st, 1976, in the afternoon near Harlingen, Texas. And it says that Tracy Lawson, 11 years old, and her cousin Jackie Davies, 14, were playing in Tracy's backyard in an area in the Rio Grande Valley, down near the Mexican border. As they looked out on a plowed field beyond the yard, they noticed an unusual object standing some 100 yards away near a borrow pit bordering an irrigation canal. I'm not sure what a borrow pit is. If anybody's from Texas, let us know.
Maybe it's a barbecue pit.
No, I don't think so. No.
I'm pretty sure they would call it barbecue pits.
This is BORROW.
All right, well, continue.
All right. Tracy went inside her house to get field glasses or binoculars, through which she observed a, quote, horrible-looking black bird of extraordinary size, over 5 feet tall. Its wings were folded around its body, and the bird was staring at the girls through large, dark red eyes attached to a gray gorilla-like face. Its head was bald, and it had a beak at least 6 inches long. It made a loud, shrill E sound. The bird, or whatever it was lost to view for a few moments, reappearing on the northeast corner of the property, its head poking above a small clump of trees.
Oh, wait, I've heard this story before.
Really?
Yeah, it was on Monster Hunters a long time ago.
Oh, in Monster Quest?
Monster Quest.
Oh, all right. No, I guess I hadn't heard that. I love that show, too. I don't have much time to watch TV. Anyway, the girls fled inside and told Tracy's mother and father, who did not believe them. That's the trouble with kids. You know, they just don't get believed. It's not their problem. Very often it's the adults.
I swear I saw a giant bird once.
Really?
Back in high school. I swear I did.
Oh, yes, you told me that, yeah.
Yeah, unless it was...
Why did tell us the story? We've got some time on our hands here, apparently.
Well, you see, unlike everybody else that I used to go to school with, I actually used to stare at the sky during gym class when we went outside. And, like, we'd play soccer or something, and I'd just be like, blah, and I'd just, like, stare at the sky. And I swear I saw this giant bird, like, fly, like... right over us, and then like fly around my high school. Unless I was like daydreaming or something, but I'm pretty sure I saw it. Like
I remember that.
I'm 90% sure. And I was like, did anybody else see that? And they were like, see what? Because they're all like stare at the ground and stuff.
It's amazing.
But people just don't see things. It's like when you look up in the sky and you see something you haven't noticed before, or like things can hide in plain sight.
It's true.
You don't know what it is.
Very true. It's amazing how oblivious people can be. Okay, I guess we have, well, on that note, we have Officer X with us. And hello there. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. How are you doing, Paul?
Oh, very, very, very good. It's very good of you to join us. Sorry, I was telling the audience we caught you in the middle of an arrest.
You're doing your duty.
You're doing your duty. So we got high drama here. It's just like Dragnet.
Okay, I apologize for that.
Oh, not well. Don't arrest anybody for the rest of the show. Okay. Now, in the spring of 2005, we're calling you Officer X tonight, at the risk of being dramatic. Your parents contacted me and Ben, and we came up for the first visit to your home in Vermont. That was one of Ben's first 2 cases. Now, can you fill in the listeners on how, from the beginning of that experience, how things got started, and what was going on when your folks called us?
Well, God, it must have started. I was maybe 12 years old. Growing up in the house, we would constantly hear footsteps. You would hear the front door open and close. Go check it; it would be locked. Things would just move on their own. I remember one experience watching an actual picture frame just slide across a shelving unit that we had. That went on. Different members of the family watched that my whole time growing up. I would say it was about 2000 and maybe 3-ish. I moved into a basement apartment in that house. And I don't know, I'd lived there for a year or two before things started getting worse. I would always hear footsteps upstairs, different things like that. But eventually it progressed into seeing shadow-type figures throughout the apartment, hearing voices, different phenomena like that.
Okay. All right, Ben?
All right, so when things started getting weird, a lot of people think they're going crazy or just getting scared. What was your reaction? Yeah,
well, like I said, I grew up with just hearing different noises and different odd things happening like that. And when I was a kid, none of us really mentioned it to each other, and then somehow it came up in conversation, and everybody's like, oh my God, I've been experiencing the same things. And so I've always been a believer. I always try to look for an explanation, but I've always believed that there is an afterlife. And so I never really thought I was going crazy. I would always look for an explanation before I would write it off as being a paranormal event, though.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, Ben and I came in... I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Ben and I came in during the summer of 2005. That's when your folks called. And they lived upstairs. As you say, you lived in the basement apartment. They live upstairs. I can see it right now. It's just, very familiar. Became very familiar to us while working up there. And we, as is our practice, didn't receive anything but the bare bones details before we came up. And as soon as we get out of the car, now I remember that Jonathan came with us, Ben's older brother, and he doesn't do ghosts. He's more of our support staff back here at home.
He took a tour of the quarry.
He went up to the quarry that exists near your house, and there's a kind of interesting. He spent his day up there, but we were immediately drawn, Ben and I, to a spot in the backyard that we later decided was the source of the problem. And it's funny, we got right there, and immediately the two of us were drawn. And when Ben and I started working together, my idea was to see if blood relatives have the same reactions to the same stimuli in situations just like this. And sure enough, we sure do anyway.
Yes.
And that became kind of the focal point of some of our work. And our conclusion was that, now you weren't there that day,
No.
but your dad...
No, I was not.
Yeah, your dad took us around. We were amazed at the atmosphere in your apartment. No reflection on you, but in your apartment, it was, there was a lot of the negative feeling that comes from the presence of what we call a parasite. Other people, folklore calls them demons or evil spirits or whatever. And then upstairs, your mom had, statues of angels all over the place and, pie happy and light colors. And I don't know. And I was going to suggest you have your mom redecorate your apartment, but but in any case, we had a great conversation with them, and your dad took us downstairs to your apartment, and Ben took a picture, and we came out with that what's now a relatively well-known picture in the paranormal world of that. And as a matter of fact, it's on the Talking Points page, or it should be. I hope it's there for this show on BehindTheParanormal.com, and it's actually got the this figure standing behind your dad, and even our Killjoy photo expert said he could see like a hooded figure back there, and it's the shoulder of the thing is so thick that you can't see a document on the wall behind it. It's really quite an interesting photograph. So we pretty much came to the thing. I didn't want to show Ben because I thought he'd be scared, but no, he was cool about it.
Of course.
Well, I didn't know you were so cool back then. All right, you were only 13 years old. Anyway, it was a very interesting picture. So we really got the immediate impression that you were dealing with something very, very negative that we refer to again as a parasite. Okay, can you stay on hold during that? If the call of duty arises, obviously, please drop the phone. But if you could stay.
I actually went off shift just before I called you back. So
very good.
I'm
okay,
for
great.
As long as you folks need me.
Okay, so Vermont is safe. Okay, very good. Okay, we're going to wrap for a break right now. We have a commercial break coming up. Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno on CBS New Sky Radio, newskyradio.com. And we'll be right back with Officer X and his case, the Haunted Policeman. Stay with us.
CBS Radio's The New Sky. NewSkyRadio.com. Across the Veil with April Lugo.
Join April Lugo each Tuesday night at 7 for Across the Veil. Across the Veil is a show that promises to be a unique experience as April connects and communicates with those who are across the veil. April receives guidance and wisdom from the ancients, angels, masters, teachers, and guides, as well as hearing messages from those who have preceded us across the veil, family, friends, and loved ones alike. The program is an excellent opportunity for you to hear from those who are across the veil. April will be answering questions and giving insight. That's the main reason for the program. Across the Veil at 7 Tuesday on The Sky.
Look up to the sky. Psychic Radio is now CBS Radio's The Sky. Reach out, newskyradio.com.
Me by, I'll lay around
Psychic Radio is now CBS Radio's The Sky. Back to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. Call now 248-545-SOUL. New skyradio.com.
And we are back with Officer X, a serving Vermont police officer whom Ben and I worked with on a case for the past several years, really since 2005, because we spent a lot of time on cases. And now, Officer, many listeners might not be familiar with our theories, methods, and terms. You weren't, and who could expect you to be? To get a grip on these, you have to kind of forget everything you ever thought you knew about the paranormal, especially ghosts, ghost hunting, demons, spirits, the afterlife, and all that, because our approach is entirely different.
Oh, so as our British listeners would say, chuck it right out. Chuck it into the bin. All right, awesome sauce.
Oh yeah,
chuck it right into the bin.
Now, when I started paranormal research while in the seminary 40 years ago, one of the first things I learned, the hard way I might add, was that nothing in the paranormal is what it appears to be. There are a lot of reasons for that, but one of the main reasons is non-human life forms that I came to call parasites, such as the one we met almost right off the bat in your case. Again, folklore calls them evil spirits. Religion calls them demons or jinns. What they actually seem to be are life forms that feed on our negative energy. And we sat down and we explained all this to your parents. But again, we didn't see you on that first trip. So that's how these things live, these life forms. They aren't fallen spirits or bad angels or servants of Satan. We forget the folklore.
They're more like cosmic mosquitoes.
Yeah, and you were the one they were feeding off of. We were convinced of that almost from the beginning. Now, where they come from is even more interesting than they are. But early on, I came to believe that the only way to understand the paranormal is to turn to that fringe science known as quantum mechanics, especially the part that says that our whole universe, our whole reality, is just one of many, maybe an infinite number of other universes and other realities that exist side by side with us all the time. The problem is that it all seems to be an open system. In other words, these realities aren't entirely separate. They can intersect in certain times and places, or even combine with each other.
So, and voila! We can get what we call the paranormal phenomenon.
Phenomenon. Study your Greek. I told you that. Anyway, that's what happens. So that's right. I mean, we're sitting in our living room watching the Red Sox play the Yankees, say, and although hopefully not the other night, it was a disaster. And suddenly a couple of random world boundaries, or membranes as they're called in physics, brush together, and you drop your beer can as Babe Ruth himself comes ambling across your living room. You know, it seems that the world yours just brushed was that of 1920, and the Sultan of Swat himself was still alive and thriving there, and you think you've seen a ghost. But actually, you've seen the Babe himself in the flesh. If he notices you at all, he almost certainly will think that he has seen a ghost. That's how it works as far as it goes. So in your house, I don't mean to keep rambling on here, you had something very much like that going on. Only there was another problem.
All right, the problem is that there are a lot more than just humans in these nearby worlds. Among these are parasites. They seem to be able to cross into world boundaries pretty much whenever they wish. And they do this in order to eat, and they quickly found it was one of these and we quickly found that it was one of these parasites that was bothering Officer X and his family.
So I remember that when we explained this to you, you commented that yes, a phenomena would get worse when you and your fiance argued in that downstairs apartment. Can you tell us what would happen? Can you comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely. At the time, I was engaged to a girl. We've since gone our separate ways. It was just a very bad relationship. We would argue frequently, and every time there would be an argument, it's when you'd start hearing the cupboard slamming, the hamper. I remember hearing that open and close and slamming. We left the apartment together one day, came back, and every one of her shoes that were in a bag were just thrown all over the apartment, just scattered everywhere. And that's when things would definitely get worse, was after an argument or during an argument. And that was actually the first time that she saw the shadow figure parasite. We had gotten into an argument. She went out onto the couch, And then I hear her from the living room say, "What are you doing up out of bed?" And she had apparently, I was in the bedroom the whole time, apparently something walked by her. She saw it, could see it was dark, so she could just see the outline. Had my same build, walked right by her. Twice, if I remember right, walked by her towards the other room, then came right back and came into the bedroom. I was laying in there with my eyes closed. I never saw it. Enough to put a scare into her, pretty much.
Yeah. Well, the comment was made that the thing in the photograph looked very much like this shadowy figure that would sometimes be seen there, especially, again, as you say, after arguments and stuff. Excuse me. Now, I remember August and September of 2005 tended to be kind of typical in this case. Now, I remember on September 1st, you wrote to me, quote, "I have had several sightings since we last spoke of the shadowy figure I described to you over the phone. The most recent was tonight, approximately 6 feet from me in my living room. Almost daily, I seem to be catching movements out of the corners of my eyes. I usually write it off until I get an almost full look as I did tonight. Overtime at work is beginning to dry up, so I have been actually able to spend more time at home." See, actually, that isn't good, because if it's feeding off you, the more often you're there, the less luck you're going to have with this. I don't know if that is why. I'm sorry?
No, I was just say that night in particular, there was really two really good sightings I had of it. And that night in particular, I happened to be on the phone with one of my friends. He lives out of state, and it's kind of a joke now because I let out a little yelp. It was more of a black mass that time, what I saw, but it was in the center of the room, and I watched it go clear as day behind a chair that I had and disappear behind the chair. Like I said, maybe 6 feet away from me, if that.
Yep. Well, it's a very common occurrence. See, the good thing with you is that you had the good sense to, well, I don't want to say listen to us, but I mean to pick up on what was going on and to do the right thing. Now, I'll give you an example here. Okay. You continue in the September 1st note. "I've recently enrolled in college as well as working my full-time job, but have not been feeling any more stressed than normal. I actually feel generally happier than I've been in quite some time." And as I recall, things started to get better for you, and eventually you moved out of that basement, and that now you're in a great place. And your parents said things got better, and again, and it's not your fault. It's just that you changed the chemistry of the situation for the better. Now, I remember when we went up there, your parents are very, very wonderful and gracious people, as are you. And we went up, this is only, I think a year and a half, 2 years ago, and we had dinner. Our whole family came up, and we spent the night enjoying Vermont, and as we like to do. And this was, it was a really kind of a nasty evening as far as the case was concerned, because everybody else went back to the hotel. I went out in the yard. You were on duty, and I spent time. You know that tree is out in the corner there. Yeah. I felt that this thing, and this is what Ben and I were picking up, I believe, that this thing was feeding, almost like an octopus. We see these things reach into different parallel realities at the same time. Again, but this is nature. This is life. Life adapts and it eats in whatever way it can. And these things, odd as it may sound, do seem to be able to access different parallel worlds at different times. This thing was feeding on an event that was occurring in that yard, or will occur, or is occurring in that space in another reality, however you want to put it, that involved a murder. And I know you and I talked about this, I believe, and there were two guys, and they were wearing red shirts, and I said it took me like an hour to pick up on this, but something was going on there. And here I am sitting in the pitch black. I suppose most people would have been. Now, I'm not afraid of these things. Once you have their number, they stay away from you. But in any case, and immediately I thought red shirts with British soldiers. I mean, did anything happen around there during the Revolution? It's near not that far from the Canadian border, where all kinds of hijinks going on, some of which my own ancestors were involved with. But again, this could be something entirely different. I mean, I didn't bother to do any historical research to find out if a fight or a battle had taken. I did make some historical inquiries about whether there had been a crime committed there, and you would be able to tell me this too if you ever did some research on it, and there was no record of any such thing that I could find. And again, probably it could be happening in the future. I mean, God forbid. But whatever this was, very negative event, this thing was feeding upon it, and then when it couldn't get enough to eat from that, it would literally wander into your apartment and try and feed off you. That's the picture that we put together. And when you moved, you sort of broke the chain. One thing that's really ultra weird about these things is that they seem to have limited ability to move when they're in our world. In other words, you couldn't just go upstairs and start feeding off your father and mother. Although they did report that at times they would feel it there. They tend to get confused if the one they're feeding on is away for any amount of time or changes their schedule or sleeps in a different place. And we're going to go into this in detail next week on one of our shows. We're going to be doing a show just on parasites. So can you tell us anything else that happened like after that night? We were there because you and I talked privately in the car because you brought me back to the hotel and stuff. And I mean, how did things sort of start to pan out after that, after you understood better what was happening?
And it's hard for me to remember what order different things happened in.
Sure.
But understanding that it seemed to make it a lot better, and obviously, I moved out of that apartment. My life, things in my life, my personal life, started getting a lot better. Like I said in the email, I was becoming a happier person.
Yeah.
And I've since been remarried. Or married, I should say.
Yeah. You have two children. Yeah.
Girl, and have two great kids. And in talking to my parents, the tenants that they've had down there have had little to no type of reactions at all, or type of
problems. Yeah. Well, what part of the instruction package your parents received was and you too, was to send compassion and love and prayers or whatever positive.
It's more like a care package.
Yeah, a care package, exactly.
Yep.
Toward that spot in the yard where that thing was going on, or whatever it was, whenever it was or would be. And I've had people tell me that when they do that, I've had people actually use the metaphor that it turns off like a faucet, the negative energy, and I think that was one. So your case, I think certainly may not be over, but I mean it had a happy ending. Although I hesitate to think what would have happened if you'd been negative people. You're great folks, positive, and that's what it takes. To avoid these problems. So we're going to take another commercial break, and if we'd ask you to just hold on, we have some email questions that have come in for you, officer. So if you'd hold on through the break, we'll be right back on Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno on CBS New Sky Radio, newskyradio.com. Stay with us.
CBS Radio's The New Sky. newskyradio.com. This is the Lisa J. Smith Show.
Change your perception, change your life. This is Lisa J. Smith, and you can tune in at 3 o'clock Eastern to listen to Lisa J. Now. I'm here to give you messages from Spirit and to help you have a new way of looking at life. That's at 3 o'clock Eastern on CBS Radio, The Sky.
Look up to the sky. Psychic Radio is now CBS Radio's The Sky. Reach out, newskyradio.com.
My best friend gave me the best advice. He said each day's a gift and not a given right. Leave no stone unturned. Leave your fears behind. And try to take the path less traveled by. That first step you take is the longest ride. If today was your last day, tomorrow was too late. Could you say goodbye to yesterday? Would you live each moment like your last? Leave old pictures in the past. Don't wait every night you laugh. If today was your last day, worth the prize, is always worth the fight. Every second counts, 'cause there's no second try. So live like you'll never live it twice. Don't take the free ride in your own life. If today was your last day, would you make your mind? I'm mending a broken heart. You know it's never too late to shoot for the stars, regardless of who you are. So do whatever it takes, 'cause you can't rewind a moment in this life. Let nothing stand in your way, 'cause you're half the time. I'm never on your side. If today was your last day and tomorrow was too late, could you say goodbye to yesterday? Or would you live each moment like your last? Leave old pictures in the past. Donate every dime you had. Would you? And what you call those friends you never see? Reminisce on memories. Would you forget your enemies? And once you find that one you're dreaming of, spare up and down, you gotta hope that you finally fall in love. If today was your last day.
Psychic Radio is now CBS Radio's The Sky. Back to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. Call now 248-545-SOUL. New skyradio.com. Believe.
And we are back with a serving police officer we're calling Officer X. We refer to his case as the Haunted Policeman case, and Ben and I have worked on that since 2005 or so, and we've had a good conversation about the case and its resolution. Seems to be a certainly very happy ending. Officer X now having moved out of that apartment, got married, everything in life is going well. And we wanted to ask him a few questions that listeners have sent in. And this is a question from Holly Kersey in Boston.
All right, and Holly writes, I'm looking forward to the show because Paul and Ben have said that police officers are among those who run into paranormal in a great deal. And my question to the guest is, do you run into other cases of the paranormal in your line of duty?
I've actually had some unexplained things, being paranormal or not. I'm not, I can't say 100%. I can say they were very odd. One night, we have this old building that has alarms would go off in it when I was on the night shift. Oh, God, all the time. I went in to check it. We had an employee come. I checked the building on the inside, and we figured it was nothing. She comes up to me and says, a motion detector just went off upstairs. So I radio for a backup unit, and I go up. I no more than get to the top of the stairs, and I can hear somebody walking at a good pace towards this door at the end. You couldn't quite see the end of the hall. My backup gets there, and doors there were locked. We got a key to go through the doors. There was construction going on, so you can see footprints when we went through. There was absolutely nothing there. Different odd things like that. I've had similar type stories happen through the years that I've been in this, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, maybe I should qualify that by saying that in my experience, the groups of people who run into the paranormal the most are perhaps urban police officers, well, all police officers, but particularly urban police officers, clergy, and psychologists. I've had, we worked for a while with a psychiatric social worker who was a psychologist and said that I was more skeptical about the paranormal than she was. Because this stuff would walk in and people would, the only explanation she could think of was something paranormal. But I remember one case here in Woonsocket, Rhode Island, where we live, and it's many years ago. It's got to be 12, 13 years ago now. One of the more interesting cases that I wrote about in Footsteps in the Attic, my book Footsteps in the Attic, was referred to me supposedly by the police. They were called to and Woonsocket has about 40,000 people. It's not enormous. And the officers were called to a house where there was a noise complaint. It sounded like there was the football team was having a party in there. And they went up to the door. They had to open it by themselves. There was nobody who answered the door, and all silence. Immediately, there was nobody in the house. They shut the door. Immediately, the noise started again. Opened the door. Nothing in there. One of the officers went back to the cruiser and would not get out, and the other one suggested that somebody call me. So I went down and turned into this interesting case. So perhaps I should say urban or semi-urban or large town police officers run into it all the time. But I think all of you fellas do at some point or another, because whether people are involved or not, it does seem to be a symptom of our existence here on planet Earth.
It is really common. I've heard quite a few, quite a few stories that are similar to what I told. And checking buildings. Of course, we're in old buildings, and where I work is an old city.
Yeah.
And it's you talk to some of the guys, and there's always a few stories out there.
Sure. Well, let me ask you this. Some of our listeners won't forgive us unless I ask this. Have you or your jurisdiction ever worked with a police psychic?
Well, there was one instance. God, I was just part-time with my department at the time. We personally did not work with them, no. We had a lady come to us and say her purse was stolen out of her car at one of our cemeteries. We had a problem with people would sneak up into the people's cars from the woods and take their items out of their cars when they were visiting loved ones that are passed.
Well, that's nice.
This lady calls us up a couple hours after her initial report and says, I went to see a psychic. And the psychic said, next to this particular gravestone, describe this type of gravestone. This was maybe 15 years ago, so the details are a little fuzzy for me, but you go down over the bank, that's where you're going to find your purse. So, kind of chuckling it off, my sergeant and I went, and I go, well, whatever, it was a quiet night, we'd check. Sure enough, we found the gravestone that she described, and we found her purse right down where it was described to be.
Minus the wallet, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
As far as departments, it's nothing I've heard of happening. It doesn't mean it hasn't happened, but it's nothing I've really ever heard of, at least with us.
Okay, well, very interesting. This is from Mark Fortin in Albany, New York.
All right. And he writes, I'd like to ask the officer if he has ever told any of his police colleagues about this and how they reacted. Well, this being
your own case.
Yes.
Yeah. Excuse me.
I'll take that as a no.
No, I have mentioned it to most of them, and you get the normal laughing and get called crazy. You get some guys who will take it seriously. You get a lot of mixed reactions,
Yeah.
There's some guys I won't mention it to just because I don't feel like getting laughed at.
Yeah.
Most of them that I work with know the different stories and different situations. Like I said, when we were checking that building and heard the footsteps through there, I told my partner about that, obviously. But it's a mixture.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's it. Yeah, there are some people, and if it makes you feel any better, I mean, I'm sure you know this by now that everybody has their own stories.
Yeah.
And there are. It's like the guys in commando units who are afraid of everything, who are afraid of nothing except the needle and the dentist chair. People will always say, well, I laugh at this, but then if you get them into a more intimate conversation, they'll say, well, gee, it's funny you should say it because this has happened to me. So this kind of thing does happen. I have to ask you this because we are very big on this show about, our theories in general is that all areas of the paranormal are related. That when you have something going on in one area, the energies that permit it to occur will also allow sometimes UFOs to be seen, or things from these other parallel realities that may not necessarily be related to each other, but that nevertheless can come in through the same door, as it were. And we're almost up to another break here. But could you... do you remember having run into in the area of your home, and that could mean anywhere within a few miles, stories of people seeing, say, UFOs or strange creatures, out of place people, or anything odd like that?
When I must have been 18-ish.
We got to wrap for the break. Let's hold that thought. We'll be right back behind the paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno, with Officer X, talking about the paranormal in Vermont at this point. Stay with us.
Psychic Radio. PsychicOnAir.com. The Wake Up Call with Ellen Tom.
But so you're the first kid on the block, and you can prove it, because there's similar prototypes, but nothing quite as good as yours.
Yes.
Yours has more than one application.
Yes, my God, you're brilliant.
Hi, it's Tom Force. Reverend L. Newman and I are here Monday nights, 7 till 9, prime time, Eastern time in the United States, with Wake Up Call on Psychic Radio.
Psychic Radio. We know you're listening. Life is a journey. Let us be your guide. Reach out on the net now, PsychicOnAir.com.
Look for Psychic Radio on your AOL radio player.
Doctor, my eyes have seen the years and the slow parade of fears without crying. Now I want to understand. I have done all that I could to see the evil and the good without hiding. You must help me if you can. Doctor, my eyes. I unwise to leave them open for so long. 'Cause I have wandered through this world, and as each moment has unfurled, I've been waiting to awaken from these dreams. People go just where they will. I never noticed them until I got this feeling that it's later than it seems. Doctor, my eyes, tell me what you see. I hear their cries. Just say if it's too late for me. Doctor, my eyes, I cannot see the sky. Is this the price for having learned how not to cry?
Psychic Radio is now CBS Radio's The Sky. Back to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. Call now 248-545-SOUL. New skyradio.com.
And we are back behind the paranormal, and we're speaking with Officer X, a serving police officer from Vermont, whose family and he were the victims of what we believe was a parasite case. Very interesting one that had a pretty happy ending, I think. And Ben and I like to think we helped a little bit. And we were talking about the idea that there's always other aspects of the paranormal that can impinge upon an area when cases like this can occur because the energies are the same, and it's different sorts of paranormal phenomena coming in through the same door. And Officer X was about to tell us an experience he has had with another kind of paranormal experience. What was that? We had to stop for the break, but go ahead.
Yeah, I was maybe 18 or so, and myself and a buddy were down by one of our lakes. I think we're waiting for some other friends to join us. We're going to go swimming or meet up and go somewhere, whatever it was. And, we look up into the sky, maybe 100 feet up. This was probably 20 miles away. Well, not even that, 15 miles away from where I lived. Maybe 100 feet up or so. There was lights in the shape of I guess the best way I can describe it is a big triangle type shape.
Oh, the triangle. Yeah, classic.
It made
Very
no
common
noise. Up until then, I'd never seen footage like that. I've since on TV had seen exactly what I've seen of people that will videotape stuff. It made no noise, just went over the treetops, like I said, maybe 100 feet up. We both look at each other. Did we? And over the years, I've gone back to him and I said, "We really did see that, right?" That's the one time I was starting to think I was crazy. Couldn't figure out what it's been. Like I said, since then I've seen television shows where people have videotaped similar things, and it's identical to what I've seen.
What was the duration of this sighting?
It was just a minute or so. It went slowly over the treetop. It was going a real slow pace, way too slow for an airplane, way too low also, and like I said, made no noise, but it was just going at a continuous speed. Went over the treetops. We actually got in our cars, went down some side roads trying to find it. We got a couple more quick glimpses at it before we couldn't follow it anymore.
This is a funny question, but what did you feel when you were having this experience? I mean, certainly excitement, or was it fear, or some? And I'll tell you why I asked that in a minute.
No, it was more. Of course, 18. I was invincible too.
Oh yeah.
But it wasn't
just
fear
like
at all. It was curious type feeling. Like we couldn't figure out what it could be. We knew it was just really odd, and like I said, we kind of, being 18 and dumb, got in our cars and tried to follow it the best we could.
Well, the reason I ask is because we had a caller from Connecticut who was involved in some of the Hudson River Valley UFO sightings in the 80s, who said that he had UFO experience from his front yard. He saw it over the trees and over the houses nearby, and he looked again, and it looked as though it was kind of just sitting there. It wasn't a triangle, but it was more of a light. And he said he felt as though he was being tested. Isn't that a funny word? And that kind of thing haunts me. I'm the kind of guy, I'll sit at my desk with my head in my hands, groaning about the future of civilization and humanity. My wife thinks it's a riot. And I worry about what these things are and what their intentions are. So that's why I ask if you had any personal feelings about this being a sort of personal experience. Because, you have these things appear, you got 1 million people around, and maybe 100 people see it, at times. Because, again, as Ben said, people aren't always paying attention. So that's why I asked that.
Yeah, it was more a feeling of just curiosity at the time. What it could be, and we knew it wasn't right, whatever it was, or wasn't normal.
Okay. Now, Vermont being a mountainous state, very beautiful, but very rural, one of the most rural states in the country, have you heard any reports of, well, let's say Bigfoot or anything of this kind, in addition, other paranormal phenomena besides these ghosts and UFOs?
That's nothing I can, off the top of my head, think of.
Okay, that's fine. Okay. All right, well then, I will just thank you for a wonderful interview.
Oh, yes,
we only have a few minutes left. And give our best to your parents, and we'll be in touch off the air.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much.
I hope things continue to go well for you.
Thank you.
And God bless you and your family. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Okay. Officer X, folks, serving Vermont police officer, and certainly is seeming to be a happy ending to what could have been a very nasty parasite case. We do have a few minutes left.
All right, so don't miss our New England Drive Time show in the Boston, Worcester, Providence Triangle on WOON 1240 AM and onworldwide.com tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern.
Okay. And also, before we do our closing ritual here, we didn't finish our conversation about the giant bird you believe you saw at school.
What? Oh, I thought that was done. All right.
No, I wanted to point out that there is a very famous flock of vultures. If you go on YouTube, you can see the Woonsocket vultures. Sounds like a high school team, but it's not. It's an actual group of large birds who seem to have settled in this area, and it's kind of creepy.
It's just like it was larger than that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know.
Oh no, I'm not doubting. I remember when you came home and told the story, but people very often will say, "Well, it must have been the vultures," and this sort of thing, or it must be this. I'm always kind of critical of critics and skeptics who weren't there. They say, "Oh, well, you saw this." Well, how do you know you weren't there? When there's more time, we'll go telling about how we're going round and round in our Rendlesham series about. The skeptical point of view. And anyway, so might as well finish. But I think that was a very interesting, and I remember you coming home talking about that. There are a lot of strange things that happen around here. This is a real hot area, especially this hill we live on. I can tell you some stories. So in any case, check out our website, and that is behindtheparanormal.com. You can get all kinds of podcasts, including of our Rendlesham shows.
All right, and if you are looking for advertising, you can email us at paul@behindtheparanormal.com or ben@behindtheparanormal.com or the official ad email, ads@behindtheparanormal.com. And if you have an author, and if you're a publishing house and you have authors that you want us to interview on the show, or if you want some airtime, we can set up a little provided it's an appropriate guest. Yes,
exactly.
Meets our criteria.
Yeah, we maintain high standards of quality. So here anyway, many thanks to our producer Will Kosnick, and we'll see you right here next Sunday, October 10th, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific on CBS New Sky Radio and newskyradio.com, when Ben and I will take the hour to go deeper into the nature of the paranormal critters we've been talking about tonight, parasites.
All right, so you can hear rebroadcasts of Behind the Paranormal on Saturdays at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 Pacific, right here on CBS New Sky Radio.
And we leave you with a quote from 19th century American journalist, poet, and novelist Margaret Elizabeth Sangster. Quote, "The tender word forgotten, the letter you did not write, the flower you might have sent, dear, are your haunting ghosts tonight."